I want to thank all of you for joining us today for what I'm sure is going to be an insightful conversation with Judy Heumann and Liz Weintraub, two amazing pinnacles of self-advocacy. As someone who's been personally involved in the disability rights advocacy for a long time, I am thrilled to have the chance to share with our attendees such important leaders in this work. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Steve Dale, a former nurse who worked in state hospitals for 17 years, and now I'm an attorney in the Dale Law Firm that specializes exclusively in estate planning for persons with disabilities and their families. I'm also the trustee of the Golden State Pool Trust. I'm excited to be co-moderating this session with my friend Pete Wall.
Hi, everybody. It's so nice to be back with you here just 15 minutes later again. I'm Peter Wall. I'm the Director of Fiduciary Services for TrueLink Financial. And as a financial services firm that's dedicated to serving people with disabilities, I can't tell you how proud we are to be able to sponsor this session. I personally am just so humbled, quite frankly, and honored to join these two amazing women today who have worked so hard to be phenomenal activists. And doing such important work, in the field that we are all blessed to be able to serve in, which is advocating for people with disabilities, legally, financially, et cetera, et cetera. Let me start by giving a little bit of background on our two guests here. Judy is a lifelong advocate for disability rights, contracted polio in 1949 and was unable to attend school as a fire hazard in a wheelchair. I've got two younger children, you guys, and when I told them Judy's story, they were absolutely floored and just shocked about that back then there weren't all these accessibility features that are still lacking, quite frankly, in certain situations today. I think my point there is that the ADA was only passed 31 years ago, and that's in no small part due to Judy's efforts. Judy's also an internationally recognized leader in the disability rights community, tons of documentaries and things like that. I can't recommend her memoir. It's called Being Heumann, an unrepentant memoir of a disability rights activist enough. And she's featured in the award-winning Netflix documentary Crip Camp, which is up for an Oscar.
Great. And we're also thrilled to welcome Liz Weintraub, who has a long history of leadership and self-advocacy. Liz was born with cerebral palsy and has held many board and advisory positions at state and national organizations. In the fall of 2018, she testified before the Senate Judiciary Committee regarding the civil rights of persons with disabilities. Liz is a full-time member of the centers that advances policy and practice for those with individual and developmental disabilities. Liz is the host of Tuesdays with Liz.
You're freezing.
Yeah, it looks like you're freezing a little, Steve. I'll take over for you. So Liz is the host of Tuesdays with Liz, Disability Policy for All. That's amazing. I love it. I just watched the one on ABLE. Very good job, Liz. Very cool. Helping helping to ensure disability stakeholder input is taken into account. As regulations and new laws are passed. So let's start with Liz. You're advocating on the Hill. Your episodes of Tuesdays with Liz is so informative. Really enjoyed your testimony, Senate Judiciary Committee. But I want to really focus in on your People First group, first person services. Many of us here in attendance today are disability trust attorneys and planners. We assist people on public benefits, maintain those benefits. How can we do it better? How can we include and make our process more accessible?
Great question. Thank you for inviting me to this conference and this discussion. It's so important to include that person with a disability, or people with disability, I should say. I think the most important part is plain language. And what I mean by plain language is language that everyone can understand. straightforward language when I don't understand something or when I can't read things, and being doing trust work and such as yourself or financial stuff, I just don't understand it, and therefore that will sometimes get me in trouble. And I don't mean trouble like the police or whatever, but in trouble meaning that sometimes I can give away money because I just don't understand what is going on. And so therefore, I think plain language, straightforward language, and it takes more time to explain things to me, but I need to be part of the issue. And part of the you need to explain it to me because this is my life.
I'd like to say something about this too, Liz. And that is, I think sometimes, whoops. Okay, sorry, there was something coming across my screen. I think sometimes, we are made to think as disabled people that there are things that we can't do that everybody else can do. So I just want to tell you that I decided decades ago that I don't feel comfortable handling my money in certain ways. In other words, I don't prepare my taxes. I don't prepare any of the forms that I need to do for the people that work for me. I have other people who do that. And I think that's a part of what we're discussing. So, you're saying that it's important for you to both have written and oral discussions simply so that you can understand what's happening. That is the same for me. I am always asking people to repeat things and trying to learn things. At the end of the day, I think what's important about what we're talking about today is that the voices of disabled people must be included, and we must ensure that we are finding the way that each person can participate in the process without a presumption that we can't.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that's so important. I was blessed to be able to talk to you both before, we sort of went on here. And Liz, you have a very personal story around this issue and around your father and some of the planning there. Would you mind sharing that with us?
Yes, sure. When I was probably 22, maybe 21, my parents called a family meeting, and they had all my family there. Well, my immediate family, my sisters and people, but my sisters and my parents. But guess it wasn't invited. I wasn't invited, and to make it even worse was I was it was happened to be on Thanksgiving, and this is why I call it my Thanksgiving story. My cousin was over, and my parents said, "Can you quote babysit Liz?" So I would not go downstairs and hear what was going on. I was 22 or I was 21, whatever I was, and I wasn't able to be there. And the reason why I wasn't able to be there was because my parents were told by the doctors when I was born that I would never be able to understand this and these kinds of issues, and why I don't need to be part of these discussions. And when I talk about me, I don't necessarily mean just me. If everyone, all my friends, and so I wasn't included in that meeting. And to speed it up, the story up, about probably 2 or 3 years later, I was speaking and told the story, and my parents were in the audience, and my father after the speech said, "Oh my gosh, I never realized what they did. I never realized how that made you feel." So now I am included. I know what's going on. I know how a trust works. I know how, yes, when Judy said that she doesn't file her paperwork, but neither do I. I don't want to know that kind of stuff. It bores me. But to tell you the truth, but what I'm saying is I make that decision whether I want to be involved or not to be involved. And at least I know what's going on in my life.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that that's so important for us to remember as planners. And one of the things that I took away from our initial discussion, something that you said, Judy, which was dream often, and dream early. And you know, I think that that's so important to include the person with the disability in the trust so that, just like Liz said, they can decide whether they want to be involved in it. Switching gears just a little bit here. I'm a board member of Easter Sears in Colorado that has a camp that's similar to Camp Jeanette, 70-year anniversary actually this year. But really, the Crip Camp isn't really about Camp Jeanette in particular. It's really about the 504 and the sit-in. And my biggest question to you, as you think through all of this, Judy, is what do you tell parents with a child with a disability, or is there any particular experience that made you become such an activist?
Well, I think, starting out with what Liz said about her parents. So her parents were great people. I don't think they, as you were saying, Liz, they weren't like intentionally not including you. They just never thought about you as being able to participate in this process like your sisters. So for me, the message here for parents is you include all your children and your disabled children, and let your disabled children understand from an early age, regardless of the significance of their disability, that you value them and you see them as having a life which is moving forward. And the reason I was mentioning to Liz about, some of my reluctance around numbers and money, I think also, in addition to having disabilities, many times girls and women, boys and men with certain kinds of disabilities, there is a presumption that we can't do certain things. So for me, it's parents not setting limits for their children. Society does that well enough. And it's really, your children will respect and admire you as they're getting older for assisting them in being able to move forward in society and ensuring that, they are given opportunities that are age appropriate. So, parents have responsibility for kids when they're kids, but then as you become teenagers, roles change and adults' roles change. And they're, having circles of friends or other kinds of people that can be supportive with someone who may need more assistance in learning and articulating what their needs and desires are. It's just that there never should be a presumption, in my view, and parents need to play a strong role in this, that we should count anybody out.
So, Judy, hopefully this is working at this point here. So, and by the way, I'm so honored, to have you on this panel here. So, getting back to Crip Camp, I know you put yourself on the front line here. And for those of you that have not seen Crip Camp, it's an absolute must see. So you put yourself on the front line, whether it was stopping traffic in front of the Nixon headquarters in New York City, at the San Francisco Federal Board sit-in, or in front of Califano's house, or in front of the White House. Is there a particular experience that's been especially memorable or impactful for you personally throughout your career as an activist?
Well, I would say what I'm going to say, and then I think Liz came later doing a similar activity. So all the demonstrations and all the organizing that I did has been very important. But the day that I testified at the joint hearings for the ADA was really one of the highlights of my involvement in the disability rights movement, because the hearings were the culmination of work that was being done by so many people, that the Congress was finally listening to what we as disabled people were saying. And so I was very proud to be a part of that very prestigious group of senators and congressmen and of disabled people and family members who testified, I believe it was in 1989. And Liz, you testified. Could you just briefly tell us who you spoke at the hearings for one of the Supreme Court justices, right?
Yes. In 2018, on the at that time, President Trump nominated Judge Kavanaugh to be on the Supreme Court. And the case that didn't make a lot of the news was a case regarding, I think it was two women who wanted, 2 or 3 women who wanted an abortion and a cataract operation. And at that time, they were in an institution. The institution has since closed here in DC. And the women didn't want an abortion, and they wanted a cataract operation. And the upper court, the lower court said, of course, you need to listen to these women. And when they brought it to the upper court in DC, they, Judge Kavanaugh, who was on the court at that time, said, no, you don't need to listen to these women, because at that time that they were called MR. And I hope everyone knows what MR is. Do people know?
I think it's safe to assume they do, Liz.
Yes.
Okay. Anyway, so Judge Kavanaugh said you do not need to, because they have MR and they wouldn't even know what those operations are. And well, I can tell you that I don't know. I don't understand. And if I did, and yes, I understand now, but if I didn't, I would have someone with me. I think everyone should have someone with himself, whether you have a disability or not. So when I heard that and my story that I just told you about on my Thanksgiving story, I said to people, oh my gosh, this is my trial, my case. And maybe I'm being funny because it wasn't really my case. And so I was asked to testify in front of the judiciary team. And again, obviously they chose Judge Kavanaugh got to be the Justice Kavanaugh, which was a very sad day for me. But I can tell you that one of the things that I hold very dear to in my heart, and one of the things that I demand, and so do a lot of my friends, so do most of my friends do, is the phrase "nothing about us without us." If there's something that you're talking about, I demand. I don't just ask, I demand. Just like Judy said, Judy protested about the 4-6, and I demand to be at that table. It's not a question about whether I can be at that table. I demand to be. So.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for that, Liz. It really sort of speaks to, having the person with a disability at the table. Steve and I yesterday did a presentation on the ABLE Act and how it, sort of empowers, people with disability, people on means tested public benefits, some more freedoms and some more, empowerments when coordinating with the Special Needs Trust. And that's really, to me, that's what your Tuesdays with Liz, program is a lot about, is explaining, some of these regulations in plain language, easy to understand language. But something that, you and I talked about a little offline, Liz, was, the facilitation of the trust agreement along with the ABLE account may not be all that we need to look at. I mean, I think you mentioned, using a daily money manager, from time to time can really be helpful. I think that speaks to your always having somebody in your corner, right?
Yeah.
Which I think is fantastic. So let me ask you this, Liz. What would you say to yourself, let's say at age 16, 17, 18, as your parents are planning, for the trust and things of that nature, so we could see, in your shoes, what that would have been like?
I can tell you that I would never go back without a money management. I think that my money management person, and I talked to her today about what does this mean, or what do I need to do, or how do I do this, or what does that word mean? I can tell you that anyone needs, especially people with disability, need to have the confidence in themselves that I understand what's going on. It's my money. It's my business. I want to be involved in, but I don't want to. If I didn't have my money management, and I use her name as Sally, if I didn't have Sally in my life, I don't know what I would do. I probably would give away money. Sure. The scam people would call me up and say, I want to sell a magazine to you. Well, yes, I like magazines and I like your hair. If your hair is black and I like it and you're at this store and you're saying, can I have, oh, please, can you give me $10 for the poor because or COVID? Well, maybe I would give you $10 during this time. But now that I have Sally in my life, I'm more cautious. I know and I understand that I shouldn't give away money just because you have black hair and you're pretty. I know to go and talk to Sally and say, is this a legitimate cause?
So I think also, Liz not only does her radio program, and I do a YouTube channel, and we have different shows but similar focuses. And I think, Liz, you also talk to other disabled individuals and to parents who have disabled kids, and I do the same. I think for those of you who are involved in this field, these types of discussions are important. Because Liz, you're how old today?
I'm 54.
I'm 73. So we have a lot of years experience, things that we've done right, things that we feel like we wish we would have done better, and things we just didn't know about. And so I think, people like us as examples are very helpful in also talking to professionals about what it is that we're interested as examples. I think Liz's messages are so very important. And for me, I interpret them in today's world as saying, if Liz was 21 years old today, I would have hoped that 5 years ago, I, maybe as her parent, would have started talking about money and money management. And like with my other children. And then, as a parent and as a money manager, whatever, you get to understand what people know, what they can learn, what people need to know, and help work with people grow. For me, as I said earlier, handling money, not the day-to-day money, not paying a bill and not going to the store and things like that, but bigger money issues. Investment. What is investment? Most people don't really learn about investment, whether or not they have a disability. But this is something that people can learn, but we have to be taught. So I think particularly for people who may be looking to being able to have a trust established, for them really looking at what we want to ensure people who are handling money as well as the adults around them in their lives, what they need to know, trainings for them to ensure that their children, as they're younger, and you bring people like Liz and me and others in to really talk about experiences, talk about what should be happening and how it should be happening. And you all know this field is changing all the time. You have to have days of conferences and meetings and things like this to handle your responsibilities. So, the people that you're working for are not the same level of expert, but maybe they are in some cases, but frequently may not be. But it is really your job to ensure that people are being given appropriate information so we can make appropriate decisions and be a part of the process. And I think ultimately Liz's story about her father and mother, because your mother didn't ask that you be at the table either. The lesson was, don't do this again, include me, and let's figure out how we do it, right?
Yes.
And they understood after they heard you speak about this on a panel And I think it was a powerful message for them to get that from you, the daughter that they felt, and they loved you and they felt all kinds of wonderful things about you, but there was this gap, right? They didn't see other potential.
Yes. And I also think that it has something to do with trust. I don't mean trust in your sense about, I mean, trust me as a person, trust that, or trust the fact that I want to learn, I want to grow, I think that if my parents, the message that I think that I gave to my parents the day that I spoke is that, gee, I would like to learn. I don't have all the answers to it, but trust that I want to grow. I want to learn how to be a grown up. I don't want to be a kid for the rest of my life where I don't understand money. We can't not know about money. Money isn't a bad word. It's just like the word sex. People don't often teach us the word sex because we should be having sexual relationships. But we're not here to talk about sex. But the reason why I'm bringing that up is because people often don't want to talk about money. They say, oh my gosh, don't talk about money because people just don't understand it. Well, yes, we will understand it if you give us a chance to understand it. Just like we'll understand sex if you let us understand things.
But by the way, both Pete and I have been following both of your ladies' weekly blogs here, and I have to tell you, they're so good. But the other part of it is coming from a person with a disability themselves, from their viewpoint and where they're coming from, is so dynamic and so helpful. It's something I would highly recommend to everybody. And by the way, they're relatively short, not that hard to watch, and I've learned so much from that. And by the way, financial literacy is something we really do need to focus more on, because I think that's one of the problems sometimes with special needs trust, is that, the trustee has sole and absolute discretion, but we need to have tools like the ABLE Act and things like that for folks to learn how to have financial literacy, how to manage funds, and how to take charge of their lives. So maybe moving along here, this will be for you, Judy. In your memoir, Being Heumann, which, by the way, I've got right here. Here, it's available at retailers all over the country, and it's available at the virtual booth here and at this conference. And it speaks to your ongoing advocacy to this day. And at your TED Talk here, if you Google TED Talk and Judy Heumann, it'll pop right up. Very dynamic here. You made a point to discuss the Convention of Rights of Persons with Disabilities at the first International Human Rights Treaty, fully focused on people with disabilities. It was adopted in 2006 with over 165 countries participating, and yet the US Senate has failed to recommend ratification of the treaty, although it was signed in 2009. What are other issues that we all can be addressing together that we may not know about?
Well, I think most people clearly understand in this room the need for money. And so I think issues that we need to be looking at are benefits that are means tested, that keep people with disabilities out of moving into mainstream society. Because if they receive certain benefits like home and community-based services, and it's in a means-tested program, that would ultimately mean that people have to be restricting their earnings. So it's really a way of discouraging disabled people from looking at working as much as we're able in a similar way to what non-disabled people are earning, working. So I think we need to look at benefits that enable us to move forward in society with our disabilities, and also other areas. The broader issue of home and community-based services, I think, is very important. The ability to have appropriate federal and state laws and policies and budgets so that people who need personal assistance services can get it. And I believe we also very much need to be looking at enforcing existing laws. We have some very good laws like the IDEA and 504 and 501, 503 and ADA, etc. Many of these laws people no longer know about. So it's helping to ensure that people learn about what their rights are, learn how to exercise their rights, and that government agencies are appropriately monitoring and enforcing the law. Those are some of the things I think are important.
Can I also add that there's, I think that there's one other law or one other act that we're trying very hard to have it pass is, and some states have a, to get rid of 14C, and that's the sub-minimum wage that people are saying that people with disabilities can get 5 cents an hour and 2 cents an hour. I want a real paycheck. I get a real paycheck just like my other colleagues, and my friends deserve the same. We need to be, and we need to have the respect enough that people can give us real pay for real work. And there are several states, I know 2 of them, who have closed down their workshops and have or they're in the process of doing that. And then the other law that I think we always need to be on our guard about is the ADA that you mentioned in the beginning, on the American Disability Act, which is almost 31 years old this year. And it almost watered down it about 3 years ago, and saying that businesses have up to I think in like 4 months. Am I correct, Judy? 3 or 4 months to make a plan to be in the to get people who use wheelchair to go into buildings, and I think that we almost lost that. Fortunately, it didn't pass, and we're fine. But I think we need to be always on the guard about that. And I think we have a really wonderful administration, administration that will help us and protect things like that. But we're always, it's always a precaution. We need to put that in a precaution. So
Liz was talking about a couple of years ago, the House side introduced an amendment that would have weakened the Americans with Disabilities Act, so that if someone was filing a complaint because they were alleging that it was lacking in accessibility according to the law, that the entity would get a certain number of days to make a change to the physical barrier, and therefore you wouldn't, as an individual, be able to file the complaint until later on. So people really fought hard against it. There were more specifics in it than that. But at the end of the day, I think Liz's point is very important. It's you always have to be on guard about laws that are in place. Right now, we were discussing the ADA, but it could be the ABLE Act, it could be anything else that's out there that people need to understand what these laws are and why they're important. I just want to say one other thing. When Steve brought up the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, which is a UN document that is based largely on the Americans with Disabilities Act. It's not a duplicate, but it's very similar in intent. The US has not ratified it. All the Democrats supported it. A handful of Republican senators supported it. But at the end of the day, for ratification of a treaty, the Senate has to have 2/3 of its members voting in favor. And if 2/3 don't vote in favor, it can't get through. And we needed 67 votes, and we got 61 votes. So hopefully it will come up in the next number of years.
One of the things that's so irritating about the watering down the ADA is it's not like these rules haven't been there for the last 3 decades. Like, how much notice do you need?
Exactly.
I'm so lucky to get to ask this question. I've been waiting a whole time for it. What do you two think about the term special needs trust?
You go first, Liz.
And I might not be very popular today.
I can't wait.
But I don't like it. I hate it. And the reason why I say that is because we all have needs. We as human beings, we all have certain needs. And yes, I may need different needs than you because you have you don't have a disability and I do, but I still have needs. As a citizen of this country, we all have needs. And why is this special? Why do I need to have a special place for my money? Why? I don't understand that.
For me, agreeing with Liz, the word special, when it comes to disabled people, means just the opposite. When we talk about special education, special whatever it means frequently that we are not easily going to be able to get into an integrated classroom. We need special services that are considered different services that can't be given in a more inclusive setting, instead of looking at educational needs of all children being unique, and that we need to be working with all children and helping them learn the way is most appropriate for them and effective for them. And that's true as we move through life. Special needs, to me, is a term that really makes people automatically look at us as different and doesn't make people look at us as different in a positive way, but rather different as needing overprotection, not able to participate, needing others to make decisions for ourselves. And that's why I really don't like it.
Liz, Judy, thank you both so much for your time. I think we all learned a lot today. I know I did. Never stop what you're doing. Please go out, subscribe to Tuesdays with Liz. Please go out and get Judy's book. Love you both. Thank you so much for doing this.
And really, you can also subscribe on YouTube to The Human Perspective. HEUMANN. Thank you, Liz and Peter and Steve.
Thank you.
And everybody else.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you.
Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom. Bye.